Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into just 2 verses from the book of Isaiah. But these 2 verses, wow, they carry centuries of meaning. They act like a bridge, connecting this feeling of total despair with an absolutely incredible promise of hope. Let's unpack how this ancient prophecy of light speaks across time.
So to really get the power of chapter 9, you actually have to back up and look at the very end of chapter 8. And I mean, the scene is just bleak. The picture it paints is a land completely consumed by trouble, darkness, and anguish. It's about a people who are just driven into total despair. That's our starting point. Not a great one, right?
And then, bam, everything changes. It all pivots on this one single incredibly powerful word, nevertheless. I mean, this word is like a hinge in the text. It's the signal that even with all that overwhelming darkness we just heard about, something is about to turn. A huge shift is coming, a move away from all that anguish and towards light.
Okay, so here's where it gets really fascinating. This passage is what's known as a dual prophecy, and what that means is it has 2 major fulfillments in history. One is sort of immediate and physical, but the other is way down the road, and it's much more spiritual. This is a big deal because it shows how a message can be relevant right away and have this deeper meaning that only unfolds over time. So let's unpack both of them.
All right, first things first. To really grasp the first meaning, we've got to get the historical context down. Verse 1 talks about some specific afflictions, and these really set the stage for the whole prophecy.
And you know, this isn't some vague, somewhere over there kind of prophecy. Isaiah gets super specific. He names names, or in this case, lands, Zebulun and Naphtali. This area becomes the focal point. And its location? Well, that becomes absolutely crucial for both ways of understanding this prophecy.
So Isaiah talks about this 1-2 punch of suffering for this land. First, there was a light affliction. That's when the Assyrian Empire came in and attacked those northern tribes. But that was just the beginning. It was followed by a much more grievous affliction from the Babylonians, and that one led to the total destruction of the nation and a brutal 70-year captivity in Babylon.
Okay, so that brings us to the first fulfillment of this promise of light, and it's tied directly to the end of that horrible Babylonian captivity.
So when you read verse 2, and it talks about people walking in darkness or living in the shadow of death, you've got to put yourself in their shoes. For them, in that historical moment, these were powerful ways to describe the sheer hopelessness of being captives in Babylon. Think about it. They were a people without a home, without their temple, completely cut off.
And the great light that shined on them, it wasn't just about, being let out of prison. It was way deeper than that. It represented a huge spiritual turning point, their repentance, their return to God, which is what opened the door for them to physically go back home. This was their first dawn.
Now that's a pretty powerful fulfillment right there. Case closed? Nope, not even close. Because this isn't the end of the story. Hundreds and hundreds of years later, this exact same passage gets pulled up again to talk about a completely different kind of light and a totally different kind of darkness.
All right, let's fast forward a few hundred years to the 1st century AD and see how this prophecy builds into its second and maybe even more profound spiritual fulfillment.
This is where things get really interesting. The Gospel of Matthew makes the connection totally explicit. It quotes Isaiah 9 word for word and applies it to the very moment Jesus begins his public ministry. It's like this prophecy, which had been dormant for centuries, suddenly roars back to life with a whole new meaning.
And check out the precision here. It's brilliant. Jesus doesn't just start his ministry in some random place. He goes to Galilee, right to the region of Zebulun and Naphtali. The very same ground that was first afflicted is now the very first place where this new, greater light would shine. It's incredible.
So in this second round, the language is the same, but the meaning goes so much deeper. The darkness isn't a foreign empire anymore. It's the internal, spiritual bondage of sin. And that great light? Well, that is the hope of the gospel message itself.
Okay, so let's zoom out and put these 2 fulfillments side by side. It's pretty amazing when you see it all laid out together and really appreciate the scope of what's happening in just 2 verses.
You see how this works? It's like one prophecy with 2 layers of meaning. The first one is all about physical liberation, the darkness of captivity being broken by the light of freedom. But the second one is deeply spiritual, the darkness of sin being pierced by the light of redemption. It's a single message that speaks first to a specific group, the Jewish exiles, And then, centuries later, it speaks again to everyone.
And here's a neat little detail for you. If you look at different Bible translations, you'll see they capture this idea of a great reversal in slightly different ways. For instance, the King James contrasts a light affliction with a grievous one. But some other versions frame it as a land that was once treated with contempt, but will later be made glorious. Either way you read it, you get this incredible sense of a dramatic turnaround for this region.
So what does this all mean for us? This dual prophecy from Isaiah 9 is just an amazing example of how a single message can speak to immediate historical pain, while at the same time holding this deeper, richer meaning that would only really be understood centuries later. It leaves you with this powerful idea, right, that meaning isn't always revealed all at once. Sometimes it's unlocked layer by layer across the generations.